Hello, and welcome to this month's Tech Talk. Welcome to everybody. We're so excited to have you here. We have decided to join the conversation that's going on in just about everywhere you turn, every industry you turn. Everyone's talking about ChatGPT or generative AI. And in our area of business, right, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of interest, and we just want to jump into that conversation. We feel we've got some interesting perspectives to share that hopefully will help all of you think about ChatGPT and where it plays in terms of your cybersecurity approach. I don't know about you, but I've been overwhelmed at the adoption. I've been overwhelmed at how quickly this has taken off. 6 months ago, ChatGPT launched, and now as of February, I think there are 1 billion monthly users. So just the adoption of this, and I think the curiosity around it has been amazing. Every industry has taken note. I think it's interesting and will be interesting to see how and where it will transform businesses or processes. Within the cybersecurity field, we're very curious how it's going to transform our business, both the attackers, the bad guys, and how it will help us do our jobs better. And so that's really what we want to tackle today, and really give folks some data points to think about. Shaheen, you've been at RSA all week. You've been having a lot of conversations about this a lot longer than any of us have. But talk to us a little bit about kind of the attacker mentality, right? And where do we see and anticipate that these cyber criminals are going to leverage ChatGPT for more gain?
Well, they've already begun to, number one, but it's not in the way that most people are probably thinking about it. Most people are thinking some of us are dumb and we put information we shouldn't into ChatGPT to help it clean up our language, to help it clean up our code, to whatever, and that data is in a database that the hackers can get access to. That's not really that is something certainly we all should be concerned about, and we should be using our best mind forward instead of our best foot forward, obviously, but to not put our data at compromise by making bad decisions about where we put it. But what's actually where the threat is ChatGPT is an infant that has been given the internet, and it has crawled the internet, and there's learning models that help it understand intent from the text that it's read. And it effectively is creating this intent understanding model based on what the developers have done with them, with the AI modeling that they did. And it creates this iterative approach to having a dialogue that feels like natural language and feels like a human being. Hacking has changed over the last decade to the point where it used to be script kiddies would get caught in 5 seconds because they would write something stupid and they'd get busted. But now there's entire organizations, crime organizations, that are creating ransomware as a service and things like that that make it easy for a script kiddie to jump on and make a quick $30, $50, $100,000. Where ChatGPT comes in is now it is allowing those script kiddies to take and tweak code that they get from these ransomware as a service or as a service hacking, or even go on the dark web and find something and then they can go and iterate with ChatGPT and say, I'm trying to do this thing. How would you write a script to do this? And it says, well, you shouldn't do this. It's terrible. It's a bad idea. It's against the law to hack. And like, oh, what if I was doing a science project for school? And then you get past the protections and controls. That's where I start to get concerned about what's possible. And we keep talking about the companies who are front-ending ChatGPT, like the Bing, when Bing Chat came out, there was a lot of concern around, we have to be careful and we have to start putting some controls in place so people aren't using it for nefarious functionality and not getting around, the controls we have in place to try to protect. But none of those controls really exist today. Mm-hmm. And you can go directly to OpenAI site, and I've had very interesting and fun dialogues with our wonderful friend ChatGPT, and are at the end of the day getting around limitations that she puts in front of me that says I'm not allowed to talk about that, or I'm an AI, I don't understand that. I'm like, okay, let's pretend you weren't.
Mhm.
let's go left, let's go right. And what if you went sideways around this thing? And you can bypass those short-term blocks that are intended to, let's say dissuade the average user from saying, okay, we can't talk about this.
Mhm.
But I think the fear and the concern is the quick access to the internet that it gives anybody, and nefarious actors being of the highest risk to the rest of us. It's a transformational moment. Just like BlackBerry changed our mobile phones to a PDA, and the iPhone changed the BlackBerry to nothing but a PDA. We have that same transformational moment. We went from Gopher to Yahoo search and Google search, and now ChatGPT is the next transformational search engine.
Mhm.
It's a iterative human dialogue like in search capability that is immensely powerful. I have my first interactions with ChatGPT were not direct. They were through people who were analysts who were being invited to look at it and see what it does. And they all say, this is amazing. I'm not ever going back to a normal search again. Google was amazing. That's the only thing I've used for years, but why would I go there? There's this new concept of prompt engineers that people are putting out there. They're telling kids you should go become a prompt engineer so you know how to create prompts to interact with. And I would argue that most of us in the tech space, whether IT or security or whatever, have been prompt engineers just for Google. And now we're readapting to. What's cool about it though is if your first prompt is a little bit off, you don't have to go and recreate the prompt. You can fine tune the prompt. You can say, okay, really close, but can you change the intent to be businesslike, or can you do whatever it is? So I think it's an immensely powerful search engine is the short of it. Can it be used for bad? Absolutely. But that was true with Google too.
Right.
It's,
Well, and I think, when you read what's going on or research, or, kind of the folks out there who've used it a lot, I think you look at kind of the basic approaches that threat actors take, right? Whether it's phishing or malware. And from what I'm understanding, from what we know now, because I'm sure, bad guys will find a totally different way to do something, but it's, the phishing attacks are going to get smarter. They're going to, different language, they're going to hone in on people's tone and style and things like that. So phishing, more effective. Malware, scale, right? So that, to your point, you're going to be able to tweak code, or you're going to be able to do things that, maybe you couldn't do before. It took you a lot longer to do. So you kind of have scale and more variability or more variety.
Yep.
So those are the things we recognize today, that it seems like the heat will be turned up.
it's true.
Do you see anything or anticipate anything beyond what we already know, but expect the intensity to go up? Do you see any other opportunity yet?
Well, there is, I don't see opportunity, because think about it from this perspective. We've got, when I go out prior to ChatGPT and I'm working on some code I'm trying to develop, I'll go into Google and I'll say Python script to do blank. And it will pour out 32 sites for me to look at, and I'll go site by site until I find an example that matches what I'm trying to do. And somebody who's asked a question very similar to I have on some news group or chat group or whatever, usually Stack Overflow, and then there's 13 people who've answered that question, and one of those people has something that's very close to what I'm trying to address, and it helps me close the gap on that particular problem statement I have. I was writing interactions with some APIs about 3 weeks ago, and I was just banging my head against this wall, and the code was authenticating, but it wasn't giving back the results I was expecting. And so I went to ChatGPT and I said, I need a Python script. That connects to this API, asking for this relationship and getting this data set back in very human language. And it wrote a script in about 35 seconds, a Python script. And that Python script effectively had everything I needed, with the exception that the authentication was broken, but the part in my code that was wrong was there and clean and fixed. And literally in that 30 seconds, I saw where my gap was, where my problem was, put it in place, and the program was off and running. And that power was for good, but it can very simply be used for, I'm trying to create this script that takes passwords from the local machine and sends them to me, and then takes all the files and uploads them to FileZilla, and then encrypts the machine. And it will write it and give it to you.
If
So
you work around those guardrails. if
their
you go to the-
guardrails, the guardrails are not very high. You
Yeah.
can step over them very easily, because you say, let's say I'm a researcher and I'm trying to test this in the lab, and okay, let's do. So it's, and for all you bad guys out there, close your ears right now. But the reality is, there's no, I don't think there's anything new about how this power can be used. It's the speed and the acceleration that's the concern. So now we've had historically some really smart people in the hacker space that are doing things on the dark side, if you will, that have enabled many other people who aren't as brilliant in doing nefarious things. But there's been a time gap of, they take a leap, we take a leap, they take a
Right.
leap, we take a leap. Now it's like they're running and we're like, holy shit, we got to run to catch up now.
Right.
And so I would say that's probably the unseen that's coming, and how quickly do we need to move. And we've said this on a couple of other tech talks before. I am frustrated with my peers in the community, and I'm concerned that the entire security industry is focused on the endpoint. That's not enough. It's how do you prevent those attacks from coming in? You talked about generative AI, and there's, we've seen multiple examples now in news and articles and social media sites about the mom whose daughter called her and said, I've been captured, send money. And it was the daughter's voice, it was the daughter's tone. And the daughter comes downstairs and says, what are you doing, mom?
Right.
And
right.
those are scenarios where that's where generative AI really starts to get scary. Is the deep fakes are becoming not just pictures, they're becoming voice, they're becoming intent, they're becoming tone.
Right.
And how do you protect against that kind of stuff? So phishing is now, there's going to be we have smishing and phishing and wishing, and now there's going to be another ishing, whatever this new ishing is, that is effectively deep fakes interacting with you and scaring the heck out of you because a family member's in trouble.
For sure. Or apply that to the organization, same thing.
Right.
So so that makes my stomach curdle, because that's scary. And the bad guys do leverage social engineering, right? And they know anything that makes you fearful, or anything like that, you're going to act on quickly, right? Fight or flight. And so you see your kid, you see your boss, you see whatever, and it's like you're going to act. So that tactic is similar, but they're dialing it up in intensity. So if we kind of pivot and say, okay, so we see acceleration, we see scale, we see sophistication, which is where we feel ChatGPT is really going to push the envelope on the cyber attack side. What do we do? And are there fundamentals that stay the same? Are there new things we should think about? One thing I think about when I hear you say acceleration, I know organizations already today have a hard time keeping up. And if that adversary starts moving faster, I think of COVID, right? Didn't let a crisis go to waste. Phishing attempts went up almost 600-700%. So this is going to be another opportunity that bad guys don't let go to waste. And I'm curious, those numbers that we're going to see in the next couple of years, and where it's going to put the most pressure, and what security fundamentals do we really need to pay attention to?
So in 30 years of doing what I do, I've been a CISO and a CTO for 30 years. The fundamentals haven't changed. Everybody's talking zero trust right now, like it's this new evolution and it's the way we're going to save the world. Zero trust is over 30 years old. Nothing has fundamentally changed. It's really the time, the wherewithal, and people that you apply to a situation and experience and the layers of protection, those things have all stayed the same. What's really frustrating about right now is because of I said this a bunch of times, you guys are gonna get tired of hearing me say it, is that the industry, because we've gone to a completely distributed world and the edge has moved out, has decided that security has to be at the endpoint. And the change is, everybody's calling XDR services today, is that they are saying that security is, XDR is endpoint plus integration with other tools that do security, so that we can get information and map it and coordinate. And it's not enough. It's just some log data and endpoint security doesn't solve the issue. It's the layers of security. And it doesn't change with regards to these solutions. It's all of the things that the bad guys can take advantage of with this generative AI approach, is figuring out ways to get around these security controls that we're putting in place. And if we're blocking and tackling the lion's share of the attack vectors, we're preventing the lion's share of these things from getting in our network. Number one, 93% of all attacks start in email or some sort of ishing. So let's stop the ishing, and whatever new ishing comes out, let's make sure we have tools that are addressing that as well.
Well, maybe even before they get to the end user.
Yes.
Right. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to rely on them?
We shouldn't have our accounts payable clerk getting a deep fake call from the CEO saying, I'm stuck in Barbados, send me $10 million. Right. Those are the types of things we used to deal with, and we've addressed those, but there's now going to be a new voice call that sounds like the CEO. There's going to be a new voice call that sounds like the CFO. The second layer is DNS defense. 80% of all malware that ends up getting to the machine, that exfiltrates the data, that encrypts the systems, that causes the grief in our world, that makes us go to the cyber insurance company and pay ransoms and bring in an incident response team and all those things, is 80% of that malware needs DNS to function. If you cut it off at the heels, that's only 20% of the stuff that we have to deal with. Now let's back up for a second. If you're standing in a room with 15 of your peers, 3 of those people have not only been encrypted and hacked, they've been encrypted and hacked twice. 5 of them have been hit at least once. So do you want to be in the 50% that is being hit because you thought XYZ company's XDR solution is the end all answer? It's not. You need the layers of defense, and integration alone isn't enough. You have to have the tools in place. You have to have the layers in place. Next level is the endpoint. Once it gets to the endpoint, you darn well better be able to stop it. So that's 1 out of 5 things I'm going to tell you about. It's not the answer. It's one component in your layered approach. Next level is the network itself. Almost nobody, everybody talks about zero trust, but nobody's touching the network. Not one security vendor out there is addressing the network other than finding anomalies on it, but no protections. What's the problem with the network? Once that malware gets to the endpoint and that endpoint is missing its EDR solution, or they figured out how to bypass the EDR, it spreads to other systems in the network. And it spreads in more and more intelligent ways that are harder for the system to identify. It uses credentials it's captured from your domain admins so that it can easily spread through the network. And the attack surface becomes your entire company because nobody's doing network security well. So microsegmentation, reduce the attack surface, reduce the risk. Segmentation is not new. Microsegmentation is more new. But the world isn't doing it. Nobody's doing it right because it's hard. It's really hard. Last layer of defense is eyes on glass. If you have all the best tools, if you do everything I just said, but nobody's looking at them, the bad guy could be like bouncing from system to system without you knowing about it. I can't tell you how many times we've gone into an incident response situation and the bad guy's been there 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, and nobody saw it, but it's in the logs. They were there, but it wasn't because they were failing at their job. It wasn't because they were ignoring alerts. It's because they have 30 consoles to look at. They don't have the time to do it. And at the same time, they're trying to keep their business working and get the stuff done for their customers and stay on task with core versus context.
Right.
So stepping out from behind the podium and off the pillar for a second and really coming back to it, it's the fundamentals. It's the, you have to have the layered security approach. You have to be able to address these threats. You have to understand where the threats are coming from. And once you understand those things and put the controls in place, then you got to man the team that can monitor, manage, alert, respond. That becomes hard when you also have to build your product and take that to market and differentiate against your competitors. And this all sounds very self-serving, and it is. That's where we come in. That's where advanced security services like we bring to the table help to close those gaps and man them 24/7 so that it is an operational sleeping pill. I have the opportunity to now close my eyes and rest at night because I know there are people who are awake 24/7 with eyes on glass. And if something bad happens, they're going to call me.
Well, and I think, as we talk through this and we talk about the 5 layers, we talk about the different tools. I am imagining as this starts playing out over the months and years, it's going to be interesting to see how that security sector shakes out, right? Who's going to keep up? Who's going to be able to iterate? And maybe some of these best in breed players who've been here a while, maybe there are things they can't bolt on to that solution that are really going to help keep their product at the forefront. And so I think as we go forward, someone's ability to stay on top of the right tools, the best in breed tools that are solving today's security problems is going to be more and more important. And that shakeout might be more, might accelerate more too. And so add all that complexity, add then the ability to really know, is this tool set that I'm using the right tool set?
Is it effective?
Is it effective, right? Or have I hit a shelf life issue? So, back to managed services, I think as an organization, that's going to be a more and more compelling solution, just given the pace of what is coming at us today.
Yeah, and this is not a unique problem for the end customer. It's the managed services organizations are struggling with this too. And the problem is, as you mentioned, I spent this week at RSA, and it's 3,000 security vendors that every one of them sounds exactly the same, and they are all the best. And if you're in a room full of best, which one's actually the best, and are they effective? Their consoles are beautiful. They look good. They've got charts and graphs, and it's, they're showing threat telemetry, and it's okay, but is it actually effective? Is it actually doing what your beautiful charts and graphs say it does?
Right.
And the answer is 90% of the time it is not, because it takes people fine-tuning and tweaking and creating correlation rules and understanding what alerts are valuable to a specific organization and which ones aren't. And so that's where most people feel, my God, that was an amazing presentation. That was a great tool. I just have to implement that and I'm good.
Right.
And without the team to do all of what I just said with regards to continuous carrying and feeding of the security portfolio, it becomes very difficult. So the managed service providers struggle with this because they have to do IT services and end user support and manage the infrastructure, make sure the network's up. It's, those are all challenging things.
Right.
And so the empowering of the managed security space and empowering of the customer space is really what we try to address, so that all those folks can focus on what's core for them versus context. And I can't, we're getting close to wrapping up, and I can't miss out on one topic. As we were leading up to this, we had one of our viewers on LinkedIn say, this is a crazy area. Everybody's feeding the beast. Be careful. Please talk about the risks associated with that. And so as I was leading up to this, I decided I was going to have another chat with my good friend ChatGPT to see what happens and what does she think about this dialogue? So I decided to ask her. I said, where did you get your learning? Where did you get your training? I'm going to read a couple of things for you guys about the dialogue that we had. And So I said, I started out with, where did you get your training knowledge? And then she went on and explained to me, it's, corpus of deep, it was training for her deep neural network. And it was generated by text from sites and messages across the internet. Now, what does that mean? Who knows? It's, and the idea was so that it could train her to write in a very similar way to humans, so that it felt like it was dialogue. And that was all great. I said, okay, good. What should a user be concerned about when interacting with you? Then, of course, she started out with, I am an AI model. I don't know. I can't feel what you're talking about. And I said, let's peel that back. And she said, okay, with that said, humans should be aware that when they're interacting with me, there's three things they got to worry about. Number one is accuracy. And that's something we haven't covered here at all. Accuracy is important. I'm gonna quickly cross over into the political boundaries because these words cross that line. But we kept talking about deep fakes and we kept talking about fake news and all that in the past 3 or 4 years. There's a lot of misinformation on the internet. There's a lot of text that's out there that is BS, somebody trying to influence somebody's decision one way or the other. Guess who read all of that fake news? So when you're getting, she said, well, I strive to provide accurate information, there's always a possibility of errors or inaccuracies in the responses I generate. It's essential to use your judgment and verify information provided through other sources. What did everybody around the fake news context say? Make sure you verify the information you're reading from other sources. This is going back to the fundamentals of security. It's continue to trust but verify, if you will. Go beyond just reading one source and saying this is the source of truth. Don't listen to one vendor who comes in and their presentation's amazing and their product looks brilliant and it's shiny, looks new. They're going to solve all of your problems. There's nobody who doesn't make mistakes out there. So test and verify and validate through other sources. Second thing, bias. As a language model, my responses are based on text data I was trained on, which includes information from the internet. Again, if somebody had bias in the information they put on the internet, she's going to pick up some of that bias. So not every piece of information, even though she doesn't have emotions and bias, whatever she is learning, her sources have it. So she might be presenting that data back to you from a biased perspective. And then lastly, the security. And this one was, I was expecting this to be higher up in the list. There's three things she said, and this is the third one. Although I'm designed to protect users' privacy, it's always a good idea to avoid sharing sensitive information. How many times have you heard that from us in the security committee or community? Don't send your information, your personal information, your private information through email. If somebody calls you and says, I'm the bank and you need to give me your bank account number and your social security number, don't do it. Nobody will ever ask you for those things. And ChatGPT is telling us the same thing. And her examples are such as personally identifiable numbers, passwords, financial details, whenever you interact with me. So those are the three things she highlighted as areas to be concerned about: is accuracy, bias, and security. Fundamentals, foundational fundamentals.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, what about data privacy? Should users be concerned with what they send you? And she went on to respond to say data privacy is essential. Users should be mindful of the information they share while interacting with me and other AI models. And then she went on to describe that as an AI model, she uses that data to learn and to improve and to fine tune what she understands and how to improve her language model so she can interact and understand intent better. But the data is encrypted and protected and under the controls of OpenAI's privacy models. And you should go look at the privacy agreement on the OpenAI website. And I said, can you give me some salient points from the privacy? And her response was, go read it. And then she said, okay, but I'll give you a few pointers. And the pointers were all, again, back to fundamentals. We put the data in secure data centers. We make sure that we have security controls like encryption and protection of data and anonymization of data. But at the end of the day, so did everybody else.
Right.
And I'm not going to rattle off names, but many of us have stopped using a particular password manager because they got compromised 3 times and data got stolen. Right. Many of us have stopped using particular vendors for similar things for everything from network monitoring to endpoint security to you name it. So security is only as good as those fundamentals we talked about. Security is not new. Security is not something we just started thinking about from the days of ARPANET, when the internet started with 7 nodes that made up the internet, to today. Security was always the biggest concern, and it was because it started as a government agency, and it was like, what if,
Right.
you know, at that point it was in the middle of the Cold War, what if Russia gets into our network? And what if they bomb this side or that side? And so that same context has been around in the network security from the early days, 40 years ago, of when we started connecting systems together, 40, 50 years ago, whatever that is, 60 years ago, maybe. I don't remember the time frame. I'm getting old, but it feels like yesterday. So coming back to what should we do? How should we respond? It's all about fundamentals. When you're interacting with AIs like ChatGPT, when you're interacting with a phishing personality on the other side of the phone, don't ever give out your personal information. If somebody's calling you and saying there's something wrong, you got to do something, be smart, investigate, look at other sources. When you're looking at your network security, your infrastructure security, there is no one tool that's the golden bullet. You need to do your research and investigation. Find a partner who knows what the heck they're doing and can help you on this journey. Those are the moving parts, I would say, that exist, that have always existed. And all of us just are looking for that amazing weight loss pill. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, and I think to wrap up, you've shared a lot of new perspectives, but kind of back to the fundamentals, that's what it's all about. And I know, or I assume, that most of our viewers have invested in something. They're doing something, they're hoping it's working. And we share this often, but we really do this as a service to organizations out there. We have a number of different ways that are complementary that can help you wrap your head around what you've got. Whether you're interested in kind of an economic roadmap, okay, I've purchased endpoint detection, but I haven't done these things. You know, what would it look like for me to get my fundamentals
From
stronger?
A to Z, yeah.
So, you know, we have an assessment, a roadmap that can help you do that. It's complementary. It's fast. I mean, why would you not? You know, to make sure you've got this locked in. If you're curious if your security controls are working, you know I have these. I'm not sure if they're best of breed anymore. Do I even have a way of knowing if these things are working? We can help you. So, yes, we're for profit. Yes, we're out here trying to grow the business. But we do want to put these things out there to help organizations know where their blind spots are, because that is exactly what the adversary is looking for. So please, if you're curious, if you're concerned, reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you. And with that, if you have any other questions for Shaheen just about this topic, let us know. Send an email. Hope this has been helpful to you. It's certainly been insightful to me. And with that, we'll wrap, and we will see you next month.